Hi guys, welcome back to the Special Needs Spacebun channel. My name is Kristen and I have a Holland Lop named Astro. I've had him for 4 years now, or almost 4 years now. This March is his 4th birthday and I got him when he was 3 months old. I started this channel because unfortunately Astro has seizures and he has been having them for the last year. And so I just wanted to share my videos that I've had of him having seizures, and it turns out that a lot of people are experiencing a similar thing. So I wanted to create a community where we can talk about what our vets are recommending, any advice, and also just support for each other, because it's obviously really hard when your loving pet has this kind of condition. And he was a really healthy bunny, didn't have any prior issues, and then we were living in a basement suite and I moved into this apartment with my boyfriend in December of 2018. And this is all relevant when we will look into what the cause of seizures and whether or not it's like in the environment, because it was brought on very randomly. So we had lived in this apartment for over a full year before he had shown any symptoms. The apartment doesn't have any carpet. He doesn't eat any of the baseboards. He doesn't nibble on anything like that. And so we can essentially rule out the environment and toxicology of that, because he just hasn't been like affected like that. He actually used to eat our baseboards in my other apartment, but luckily he doesn't do that anymore. His first seizure ever recorded was February 28th, 2019. And so immediately we contacted our vet, brought him in for a checkup. And when you bring your rabbit in for a checkup, they do a full workup. So they'll weigh them, they look at their dental and then in their ears, as well as you have to bring in a poop sample, and then they will test that for parasites and you get the results back pretty quick. And so we did all of that and all of the tests came back negative. There was no signs of anything wrong with him. And so we were essentially sent home until April 17th, 2019. I recorded another seizure and it lasted for 10 to 20 seconds. I noted here that he was super disoriented and he actually bit me. I remember this very clearly. We're in the bedroom, he lunged at me and like he didn't know who I was after he came out of his seizure, and it was so heartbreaking for us because it was his second seizure ever and the first time he had ever been aggressive with me. Like usually he's so sweet and cuddly. And so we immediately were like, okay, something is like really wrong with Astro. We need to get to the bottom of this. This isn't normal behavior. At the time, his seizures were less prominent, and so he would stand up on his hind legs and kind of like bounce back and forth. But that day that he had bit me, it was mostly just like, it looked like his ears were shaking a little bit and his jaw was moving. It was a very subtle seizure, but it was enough that like if you were staring at him, you could see what was happening. And so we brought him in to the vet again, and that's when he was diagnosed with an ear infection. And so we started him on a course of antibiotics and started immediately giving him ear drops. And when your rabbit, at least in our case at our vet, goes through an ear infection, we have to bring him in for 2-week checkups until they see that the pus in the ears have cleared. And so he had an ear infection from April until July before he was cleared from any sort of infection in his ear. And we brought him back every 2 weeks. During that time, from April until July, he had more seizures. So I documented it on May 4th, another seizure, June 17th, June 20th, we brought him into the vet again, and then he got another ear flush to help clean out the infection that was in his ears. And then they also did a culture test and it came back negative for whatever my vet was looking for that could be causing the seizures. On July 2nd, he had another seizure, and then July 6th, there was no ear infection by then. So all of his, the ear infection had ended, but he was still having seizures, and quite frequently too. The first time that we had ever gotten a video recording of his seizure was in May. So we'd gone a few months where like our vet couldn't really give like an accurate diagnosis if it was a seizure or not. We were just making these assumptions of what like we think seizures would look like in an animal. And so finally, because it's so hard to capture it on video, like you don't know when it's gonna happen. You could be doing anything in the house. Honestly, rabbits are so quiet too that you could be in the other room and he could be having a seizure and you just don't know because you wouldn't hear it. And so it just had to happen to be right timing, right place. We could finally get it on video, and then we sent it off to our vet, and he confirmed that it seemed like an atypical seizure, not one that you would see like as a grand mal seizure where they are convulsing on the ground very dramatically. And so his was more, he would go through phases where he'd go up on hind legs, like the video that is shown here. And so I would just try to prevent him from falling over, and usually lasts anywhere from, in the beginning, 10 to 20 seconds. And now that we've had them for a little longer, they're more around 45 seconds to a full minute. But that his ear infection was gone, but he was still having seizures. And so we needed to find out what was the cause, because obviously when you have an ear infection, and if it is really bad, it could cause convulsions like what we were experiencing with Astro. So that is what we all kind of assumed, that like once his ear infection was gone, his seizures would be gone. And so when that didn't happen, my doctor decided to run an e.cuniculi test. And e.cuniculi is a parasite that can get into the rabbit just by breathing it in, I believe. Let me check. And so, so e.cuniculi is a protozoan parasite of rabbits that affects the nervous system, and it can cause like a head tilt that can be permanent if not caught soon enough to treat. Or it can cause a complete paralysis and tremors and convulsions. And so we decided to do the e.cuniculi test. It was incredibly expensive. I need to look back at the receipts, but I want to say it was like $300 to $400 just for like the blood panel, because they had to do blood work and then send off the e.cuniculi test to somewhere in the States, because in Canada, for whatever reason, they didn't have the facility to be able to do it. And the e.cuniculi test came back negative, which was good, but also inconclusive for us, because we really thought that that could be the issue. Came back normal. All of his like sugar levels, everything was normal. We talked about the possibility that it could be a brain lesion and or a tumor. And so this was really hard news for us, because he was only 3 years old at that point, and we're just like what the heck, like how does a rabbit even get this kind of like condition? But I mean, it's just like humans. It can be so random and you just don't know. And so when we were talking about this with our vet, he was saying that we would need an x-ray, but also need an MRI, because an x-ray wouldn't show the brain the way he would need to see it, to see if there is a lesion or a tumor that is causing his seizures. And when we spoke about it, it was just really unaffordable at the time for us. It was $1,500 for the MRI. And when we had kind of deliberated, like I know my partner personally really wanted the exam done, but I kind of had to talk us out of it, because like we could do the test and find out if he has the brain tumor or lesion, but then what? Like, are we really gonna operate, like do open brain surgery on our rabbit? I figure we're not, and that's like not gonna be a good quality of life for him. And it would be more of a selfish thing for us to do. And so when we decided that we weren't going to operate if he did have it, we just decided it wasn't worth spending $1,500 to find out if he did, and that instead we would just give him the best life that we could, take care of him, give him his meds, manage his seizures as best, and then basically that's where the ambiguity it like stays. So like we still technically like our vet assumes now that it's been a year and more into his seizures that he likely has epilepsy, which is a neurological disorder, and so it is common in Holland Lop rabbits specifically. And so we do think that it could be epilepsy, but at the back of our mind, I feel like it's been so long since we've gone through all like the diagnostics that we kind of forget that he totally could still have a lesion and or tumor. But I, for some reason, don't think that he does, but who knows at this point. He definitely could be having a tumor that's getting bigger, but his seizures are more manageable now that we have him on anti-seizure meds. And so that was like a lot of trial and error as well. Basically, there's 2 medications that our vet suggested, one of which you do twice a day, like every 12 hours, and it's supposed to be harder on the liver. And so we opted for the other medication. It's supposed to be given 3 times a day every 8 hours. And we tried to manage that with our work schedules. We didn't work from home at the time, but now because of COVID, I've been working from home for the last year, which has been really good for taking care of Astro. So I've been able to give him the doses exactly 8 hours in between, whereas before we were off by a couple hours. And so I've noticed that his seizures have gotten seriously so much better. He had gone 5 months without having a seizure, and that was like the longest that he had gone since we had gone through all of the testing with him. So when he had talked to us about how like the long term of the medication and how it could be hard on Astro's liver, we did discuss CBD with our doctor, and specifically CBD oil that's for pets. And when we had emailed him about it, he said that there's like not enough research in pets yet to conclude that it will be super effective, but he did say it is harmless enough that we can pick up a bottle from one of his recommended places, and he also helped us with dosing. And so we started giving him I think it's maximum 5 drops a day, and we would administer it on a cookie. And we found that when we discontinued his anti-seizure meds and we're just trying CBD oil to see if that would work, he was having seizures too frequently, and we needed to get him back on the actual anti-seizure medication through our doctor. And unfortunately, that is the case because we were really hopeful that CBD would treat him. We find it helps with his anxiety though, so anytime that we have to go to all of our vet visits, because he hates the car ride and it's an hour-long car ride for him, so we give him a few drops of CBD and let that set in, or after a seizure, we also will give him CBD. And so we notice he just gets like sleepy and less stressed, and I think that is really good for him, especially after a seizure. He gets really disoriented. For anyone that is going through this with your rabbit, I would say stay hopeful and listen to your vet's advice. We do have medicine that is really helping Astro through this and making it very manageable. Especially now that Astro takes his medicine properly, because before when we didn't know how to medicate him, it was a lot harder. And so I would say just use the applesauce trick, eventually weaning them off so that they don't need the applesauce anymore. We haven't had to do that with applesauce in quite some time, except for when he had an ear infection recently and really didn't like his medicine that they were giving him. I can make another video more on medicine and schedules and the names and everything. But yeah, now that he is on his meds and he takes it, it's seriously so manageable. He only has a couple seizures every like few months now, and so we really think that it's good to put this information out there. You don't need to jump ahead and euthanize your pet because they have this condition. It can be very manageable, and they can live very happy lives. When he does have a seizure, it takes him around 20 to 30 minutes to recover, and then he goes completely back to normal, like it never happened, which is amazing. It's just really sad during, and it's always just a stark reminder that you never know when, or we never know when our last day with him will be, when the seizure will get so bad that it actually takes his life, and that breaks my heart. That is definitely the hardest part, worrying about coming home to him and him not being with us anymore. We do have emergency medicine in case his seizure is really bad. I had mentioned previously kind of like a grand mal seizure. I'm obviously not a doctor, so I'm not going to get into it too much, but it's the one that can be a lot more convulsions, and it's a lot harder on the rabbit. And so fortunately, Astro seizures haven't been that bad, but as soon as they get over a minute, we should be using this drug called diazepam, and it's administered by, I think it's 0.2 milliliters, and then you use a syringe and you have to insert it in his butt to stop the convulsions. And so we haven't done that yet, and we haven't needed to, knock on wood. We do have it in the house just in case for emergencies, and anytime we have people watching Astro, we always have to do this big tutorial on how to care for our special needs rabbit. We had talked about like the fact that it's not e.cuniculi. It could totally have stemmed from us not catching his ear infection, because we had recorded in February. He wasn't really diagnosed until I think it was in June that he had another, like we'd finally figured out that there was an ear infection, and that can be a symptom of it, but we've never seen in research and through our vet's perspective it going on this long. Like usually if you have an ear infection, it wouldn't cause seizures permanently, and so they likely think that it's either a brain tumor or lesion, which we will not do the testing for. And now that it's been over a year, our doctor thinks it's quite possibly epilepsy. And that's just the kind of ambiguity that we have to live with unless we decided to do an MRI, which, like as mentioned before, it just doesn't seem worth it to drop that kind of money to find out on something that we won't actually be able to cure. And so we're just giving him the best life, and he is a very happy bunny, and I hope that your bunnies are very happy and they can recover from this if this is something that they are going through.